Hey, welcome today to the Coastline podcast. This is our opportunity to share with you the stories of our church family. People with the past, people who've made mistakes, people who have regrets, people who've learned incredibly valuable life lessons. It's all about God taking people's story and redeeming it for His glory. So we're going to get honest, we're going to get real, we're going to get vulnerable, and it's going to be transparent. So join us today on this episode of our Coastline podcast. All right, I'll follow your lead.
All right.
This is your show.
Hello, Coastline fam. Welcome to our first edition of the Coastline Connections podcast. You might be wondering, who the heck am I? My name is Sarah Beebe. So I'm going to be hosting this podcast. Pastor Aaron and Amanda kicked off this entire series last week with the first Grace-Based Living podcast. So I'm going to pop in once a month after them, and we're going to get to know our church family more, our church leaders, our board members, and then some of you who have incredible stories and testimonies to share. So let me bring a face in that you know and love. Our senior pastor here at Coastline, Aaron Jayne.
I am thrilled to be here.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing us to see what happens with this crazy idea that we had to start this.
Well, I love this. This was your vision. You came and you said, we need to find a way to tell the stories of the people in our church so that the people in the church can get to know each other, people in the community can get to know our church family. And I love it. I think it's great. And there's no better host than you. So I love this. I love, having a church when people have a vision and a dream, we can, our job is to help people live out their dreams and really accomplish the vision God's put on their life.
And that's it. And that's what I don't want to take credit. I want to give credit where credit's due, because this vision to start a podcast and see if you'd be interested in doing something all came from Tuesday morning prayer. I had been coming for about 2 months. I had committed every Tuesday, and God planted this little idea in my brain, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And after 2 months, I was like, Pastor Aaron, I think I need to talk with you about something. So it's just us, being faithful and following what direction we feel like we're being pushed into.
But
so
it really
really did come from Him.
And it's the vision of the church. Know God. You began a relationship. Live in freedom. You've been going through small groups and seeing God change your family's life. Discover purpose. This is part of your purpose. You have a personality. You're a host. You have a voice. And then make a difference. And so you built this to make a difference. And it is. It's going to be changing lives. It's going to encourage people, bless people, draw people closer to God, just listening to these stories. So it really is the vision of the church that you're living out through this podcast.
It's perfect. So I just thank you for that. And I cannot wait to see where this goes. And I wanted you absolutely to be our first guest because you are so open with your story. And your story, I mean, we could sit here for hours if we really wanted to get detailed about all this life that you've lived and the brokenness you've encountered and the miracles you've witnessed and how you've come through it all, right? And that is something that I feel like makes this church different, is having a pastor who is so transparent and just is like my favorite slogan, got me from the beginning. No perfect people allowed. And while it seems like, is that exclusive? Because perfect people aren't allowed, but no one's perfect. So it means everyone.
Yeah, and it's really to qualify myself to be here. Because if I had to be perfect or a perfect pastor, I would not qualify to be a part of this church. And so I love the fact that I can have a past and be a part of this just like everybody else.
Well, before we get into your past, very colorful past and fun past, I have a few icebreakers that I like to start interviews out with. And so my first one for you is, if you could have any actor in the world portray you in a movie, I don't care if they're living, dead, or of our time or before, who would you pick to portray you in a movie?
Well, I've always jokingly said Samuel L. Jackson. I love Samuel L. Jackson, one of my favorite actors. I don't quite look like him. I wish I did, because I think he's great. But, obviously I would say, I look most like Brad Pitt in real life.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. No, I honestly, I have no idea. I haven't really thought about that. All the actors I grew up with, none of the kids today know who they are.
Yeah.
And so I don't even know what new actor I would want to portray me. My wife would love Chris Hemsworth to portray me.
Okay.
Because she would just want him over at the house doing all the research about my life so that she could be around him. But who knows?
Well, let's keep her happy then. We'll go with Chris Hemsworth. You have traveled so many places all over the world. So if you had, I know it's hard to pick one, but if there was a place that really stuck out to you that you'd be like, hey, you guys, you have to go here? If you're planning a bucket list trip, like what is somewhere in the world outside of the US you've traveled that really stood out as one of your favorite spots?
They're all different for different reasons. That's the problem. Like for me, Israel is the most meaningful place that I've ever been. I love the land of Israel, I love the people of Israel, I love the culture. I mean, I love Israel. Like if I had 3 months off to do a sabbatical, I'd go live in Israel for 3 months. Love Israel. South Africa is very, very special to me. It's an amazing country, amazing people, great food, great culture. Switzerland was the most scenic, beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Everywhere you go is like a postcard. It's just absolutely gorgeous. India is just next level anxiety. It's amazing, but you got to be wired for India. Like I loved it. I mean, it's just noise and it's color and it's people and it's food and it's unlike anything else I've ever experienced.
That's so funny because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, when they think of India, they're like, oh, India.
India is not for everybody.
Rough.
It is not for everybody, but I absolutely loved it. I'm wired for it. I enjoyed it. I had the time of my life. I was with the most wonderful people in India. And honestly, I love the Indian people. I think they're some of the most beautiful, precious people in the entire world. Loving, hospitable. It really is amazing. Colombia, Peru. Man, I mean, honestly, I love culture and I love variety. And so I really can't pin myself down to like one place. I want to go everywhere and I want to see everyone and I want to meet everyone.
That makes me curious. You know, if you're planning vacations and trips, are you trying to go back to places you love, or are you like, I want to try something new. I want to go somewhere new. Do you gear towards that?
Well, for me, like last year, I went to 3 new countries that I've never been to, and I've probably been to 50 different countries. And I went to 3 new ones last year, and every one of them was special and incredible and exciting. This year, I'm going to a bunch of new places that I've never been. Right now, when it comes to vacations, we typically, our go-to for our families, we love cruises because it's easy. Everyone has something they love to do and we don't have to worry about it. And we're locked on a boat so the kids can't, get in too much trouble. But now the big thing is we got the little guy and he's all about baseball. So all of our trips now revolve around baseball stadiums. So we got a vacation coming up, our family vacation this year. We're going to fly into New York, go to the Mets game. Then we're going to drive down to Philly, go to the Phillies game, then drive down to Baltimore, go to the Baltimore game. And it's just trying to get every ballpark in America. And so right now it's all about ballparks.
My husband's from Philly, and I think a warning he would give you is wear red when you go to the Phillies. Even if you don't care, just wear red to be safe.
No, we our next door neighbor played on the Phillies in Little League, so we already got their jerseys, their coaching shirts. So we're all going to be decked out in Phillies gear for sure. And same with the Mets, same with the Phillies. And then we already got our Orioles gear because my son played on the Baltimore Orioles for Little League this year.
That will be so fun. That'll be a memorable trip. That'll be like one that he remembers. When
now
the challenge
with that trip is I've told my wife she can only bring a backpack. We're going to be backpacking and we're going to be taking trains and Ubers and we have 2 suitcases when we travel just for pillows. Like we got to have all these extra pillows, because she can't sleep without her own pillows. And so this is going to be the most challenging vacation of her life. We're going to need lots of marriage counseling when we get back from this trip.
Yeah, we'll see how far she can follow those guidelines. Okay, so my final little icebreaker here is, what is your best guess? You know those addictive white Lifesaver mints that are in every little container here across campus? How many of those do you think we go through in one year?
At least 8,000 a year.
No.
If you look at 52 Sundays a year, however many we lose per Sunday.
I would have guessed you go through 8,000 a month. Those are the best thing on this.
I love them.
People go by the handfuls and then stuff them in our pockets and our purses.
True. We do stuff those in. We buy them in bulk from Costco.
Yes, smart man. Thank you for that.
So we get a lot of those.
Okay, so let's go back to little baby Aaron Jayne, born in Texas. What part of Texas are you from?
I actually was not born in Texas.
Oh.
So my wife will not let me call myself. I grew up in Texas, but you got to physically be born in Texas or you cannot call yourself a Texan. I remember King of the Hill, Hank Hill, discovered why his father never loved him, because they were on vacation in New York and he accidentally was born a week early in New York, not Texas. And so his dad never loved him because he wasn't actually born in Texas.
Okay, so I
There's a
stand
great episode of
corrected.
King of the Hill, but it's very true. Texas is like, you can live there from like 2 days old. But if you are not born in Texas, you are not a Texan, and they will not let you call yourself a Texan.
So where were you born?
Wichita, Kansas.
Oh, I had no idea. I don't know how
Yeah.
I missed that. So how
No,
long
we got
were
a
you
lot
there?
of Wichita. We got a lot of us that were born in the same hospital. Dustin McBride, Brian McBride, Mark McBride. The whole McBride family was born in Wichita, Kansas. Mark is one of our trustees here at Coastline Church, and so we got a lot of Wichita boys here.
What a small world.
Yeah, pretty wild.
How long were you there before you moved to Texas?
I think we were in Wichita for 6 months. And then when I was 6 months old, we moved to Mississippi for, I think, 2 years or 3 years. And then we moved to Texas when I was probably 3.5, 4 years old. Lived there till I was about 8 years old. Then we moved to California for a couple of years. And then to the Philippines. And then back to Texas for junior high and high school, where I graduated high school.
How long? Wait, so quickly, how long were you in the Philippines? And
Almost
what age
2
was
years.
that?
Almost 2 years in the
Elementary
Philippines.
school?
I was 11 and 12 years old.
Oh,
in
so
the
you
Philippines.
totally remember that. Oh my
yeah.
gosh, that is wild.
Yeah,
So
Philippines was wild. It was a great place.
Your dad was a pastor, right?
My dad was an itinerant evangelist for the Southern Baptists. And all that means is you're ordained with the Baptist church and you have kind of the license to preach, whatever that means. And so he was in the military full-time in the Air Force, but he was an itinerant evangelist. So everywhere we were stationed, he would go fill in at different churches in that area, little country churches, little jungle churches in the Philippines. When a pastor was on vacation or needed a weekend off, my dad was on the roster to go fill in and preach at those churches.
So that explains the moving around. It was the military.
Military,
it
yes.
wasn't the church.
Yeah, we grew up in the military. My whole family, everyone in my family was career military. I planned on being career military. I did 3 years in the Army, and then God had a different plan for me.
Okay. So was that like after high school or high school years? Because
Yeah,
I want to get to that eventually. But
17 years old,
Okay.
left high school, enlisted in the Army, took all my testing, and they decided they didn't want me to be active duty and sent me into like a officer cadet program. And so I did that. I had an 8-year contract, only did 3 years, broke it, had to pay a lot of money back to the government, but I knew that wasn't my calling.
Okay. So we'll get up to that point. So earlier this year, you took the stage here at Coastline and you started to talk about your family and the family home you grew up in. And like I had, said earlier, you've always been so transparent about it. But this was the first time I had ever heard you actually talk about this extra level into like your grandpa and your great grandpa and like your grandmother, or was it your great grandmother?
Yeah.
There's just a very colorful past there as well. And you were showing pictures and talking about the family dynamic that just dates back far before you and kind of explains, your family life growing up and some of the struggles you had there. So I kind of want to go back to that. So starting off, you had shared that your mother doesn't have a good recollection at all of the first 2 years of your life.
Yeah.
And that was due to her relationship with your father and kind of like some bitterness towards you. So tell us a little bit about that.
What happened was a number of years ago when I was going through some therapy for all of my life issues, my therapist asked me to ask my mom to write me a letter of all of her memories of me from the first 2 years of my life. So I get this letter from my mom, and she has no memories of me. I'm the firstborn son. She has 0 memories of me from the first 2 years of my life. Her earliest memory of me was me trying to smother my little brother with a pillow. And I don't know, we were playing or something. I was probably 2 years old, 3 years old at the time. He was, and that's her earliest memory of me. And so, what we realized from my therapist is as soon as my mom and dad married, they were never happy. My dad, he emotionally has a very difficult time, expressing himself emotionally. He had a very abusive childhood, very traumatic childhood, and he also had a sex addiction. And so, from the day they got married, my dad did not know how to show my mom love, but he knew how to show me love. I was his firstborn son. He always wanted to be a father. He was so excited. He adored me. I was with him all the time. And so what I think happened was my mom began to resent me because I was receiving the love from my father that she wasn't receiving. And so I don't know if it was jealousy or resentment or just the whole struggle of the marriage, But as a result, we never really bonded. We never got close. Like my brother and sister were very, very close to my mom growing up, but I was kind of the one that always had to kind of just manage myself.
Did you see that? Did you feel that? Could you at that age see how much she was giving them more attention and loving them a little bit deeper
yeah. I
than
mean,
you?
I definitely knew growing up that there was a special bond, but it didn't I didn't know different. So it didn't bother me. It wasn't something I resented or felt jealous or threatened or insecure about. I just didn't really, it is what it was. I just thought they were the babies. Mom's taking care of the babies, and I'm, the oldest, and so I'm just expected to be the oldest.
And did that connection with your dad stay strong for those few years?
Up until, my dad left, we were always very close. He was the coach of my baseball team. We did everything together. He's actually a very good dad. Took us theme parks all the time, baseball games all the time. And we had a even though emotionally he was, could not go deep emotionally because of his own wounds, he was a very good dad in the sense that lots of time, it was time, so he'd take us everywhere, as a family. We'd go to theme parks, we'd go to baseball games, we'd go sledding in the mountains. So he was always engaged in taking care of the family really, really well.
So that's wild to me. He was so present. He was so there. He was such a big part of your life, especially with all the moving, right? You can't make super deep connections because you're with friends or community because you're moving around so much. So you really have to rely on that family unit. So here he is raising you, being part of all this. But then, when you're 11 or 12 years old, you've said
he's gone
so many times, he's gone. So before we get to that, when you're that age, did things change? Did you feel a shift where, something is happening? And not that you would ever expect your father to leave, but do you remember any dynamic of that? Oh, something's not right here. And maybe things are going to be different.
They never seemed happy, and I remember them fighting and yelling and throwing things, but it was never directed towards the kids. They were always, there for the kids. And so, as a kid, your parents fight. I didn't understand, we really didn't have friends who were divorced or single parent family friends. So for me, didn't even understand what that was. And so it wasn't like something I worried about or feared about. Like kids today, they have so many friends living in single parent homes that every time the parents fight, they have this anxiety that what if this happens to me? I didn't have that growing up. I didn't even understand what a divorce or a single parent home was growing up until it happened to us. And so it really caught me completely off guard. I was totally unaware that could ever be our reality. And I think that's probably why it hurt so much more, is because I wasn't prepared for it. I didn't know that could happen.
Do you remember the day? Do you remember the day that you came home and everything changed?
Oh yeah, I was in the Philippines. I'd come home from school, came in the living room, found my mom crying, sitting on the floor. And she said, basically said, your dad's left and he's not coming back. And within 2 weeks, we were on a flight back to Texas. And I don't remember seeing my dad before we left. I might have, that was all a blur to me, but I just remember, my mom crying. I remember this is going to change our family and I didn't fully understand. I don't remember feeling angry or emotional. I just don't remember anything. Literally, it's all blocked out of my mind. There's a couple year period where I have very little memory just because it's blocked out. And so I remember that. And then I remember kind of waking up in Texas, and everything in between is just a blur to me. I don't remember the flights. I don't remember the packing. I don't remember anything other than that day. And then, here I am in junior high in Texas.
So you come back to Texas, and did your relation, now that your dad's gone and it's just you and your mom and your two siblings, you have a brother and sister, right? Younger than you. How did your relationship with your mom go after that? Because now you don't have.
She had to spend a lot of time and energy taking care of my brother and sister because they were much more emotional than me. I kept everything inside, and I was older and I appeared to have it all together. And so I was just, I took care of myself so that she could focus on them. And so it was, she did her best, to provide, to take care of us. It was hard. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money. After he left, I remember our first Christmas tree was like a piece of cardboard that we cut in a triangle and painted it green and like colored little ornaments on it. And it is what it was. And it was tough. It was tough. But I realized right away that I had to figure things out. And so that's when you kind of develop those survivor, the whole survivor trait that a lot of kids that have been abandoned go through, and you become a survivor. Like you figure it out.
You had to grow up way too soon.
Oh yeah. And it helps you in life. You get further ahead in life when you have those survivor instincts, but it also ends up unraveling at some point. You can't hide it forever. At some point it comes crashing down on you and gets very difficult.
So was this around the time that you met a neighbor who introduced you to a Playboy magazine?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was. And so I would say probably 3 or 4 months after it all happened, we're in Texas, going to school in Texas. My neighbor is in the same grade with me. We used to walk to school together, and we had this little like fort, out in front of our house. It's like a little lot with trees and bushes, and we created this little fort in the middle of it where we could hide stuff from our family. Mm-hmm. And he took a couple of his dad's Playboy magazines and hid them in the fort. And I remember him showing me the Playboy magazines. And again, it is something I heard from my therapist when I was going through sex addiction therapy. He had a very similar experience. And when he explained it, it resonated. It was like, that was my experience. And it's simply when I looked at the magazine, it wasn't, the sex to 12-year-old boys is obviously, it stimulates your brain, but more than the sex, it was, here's a woman smiling at me. Here's a woman that looks at me as if they desire me. Now it's a false reality. That person has no idea who I am. But the way it's designed, it makes you feel wanted. It makes you feel alive. And I had never really felt that, necessarily growing up from my mom, like a smile, somebody looking at me adoringly. And she did. I don't want to throw her under the bus because she was a great mom. She just was dealt a really nasty hand in life. She had a hard childhood, very hard childhood herself. She married a guy that was emotionally detached and unavailable. And so she had a rough go at it. And so I don't fault her at all. But when I saw those magazines, it was like I felt wanted. I felt desired. I felt like somebody wants me. But then the hook gets in. And it's a chemical addiction. What people don't realize about porn is it's a chemical addiction. Pornography releases the same chemical cocktail in the back of your brain that heroin does, that crystal meth does. Because heroin itself doesn't make you like high. Heroin releases chemicals in your brain that make you feel that way. And so the porn releases the same chemical cocktail in your brain that makes you feel a certain way. And then you learn how to cope. Anytime you feel stressed, anxiety, any pressure, it's a way to cope. It's a way to relieve that pressure through that chemical cocktail that porn delivers.
That is so wild to me to learn. And I have to tell you why. I don't want to. I've heard of I can remember David Duchovny having to go to rehab for a sex addiction or whatever. And I remember being like, oh, okay. And I don't know if it's like a woman thing because we're just built so different. Yeah. Or it's both, but more of a man thing to probably deal with that addiction. But I really thought, oh, what an excuse. I totally didn't know it, understand it. I didn't ever heard of it before that. That's just me going back to where I can first remember ever hearing about sex addiction, right? And then we've heard some other celebrities come with it too. So to hear you explain it that way is really eye-opening. And also, to your knowledge, is this, how they say alcoholism can be genetic. It can be passed down, from parent to child. And learning a bit more about your father and your grandparents, so sex addiction goes back into your family tree. Do you think it's a genetic?
I don't know if it's genetic, if it's wired into your DNA genetically, or if it's just a spiritual transfer. Because at the end of the day, as human beings, we are spirits that live in a physical body. We're not physical bodies that have a spirit. We are spirit. The spirit part of you will live forever, and you'll get a new physical body at one point. And so this physical body that we live in is very, very temporary. So it's not the realest part of who we are. And so I don't know if it's just a spiritual transference where you have this generational sin that is passed down. What I do know is every one of us were born with sin inside of us, and that sin manifests differently, and so sometimes it's a generational manifestation where alcohol or sex or whatever it is, it's generational. But whether or not it's hardwired into our genetics or DNA, I know that there's science on both sides of it out there. I don't think anyone is unanimously in agreement over it. And so I tend to believe it's more spiritually transferred than it is wired into our scientific DNA or genetics. I just think when you grow up in certain environments, you're more inclined to whatever that environment feeds you to kind of fall into that trap. And Satan's good. Satan knows what he's doing. He knows how to, orchestrate circumstances in our life to lead us down certain paths and to feed us things and feed our appetites things that can put a hook into our soul.
So can you explain a little bit back in your family tree of what you know about this sex addiction, where it went back as far as even getting your last name Jayne?
Yeah.
That story is crazy. I mean, we were talking about that after church. We're in line getting barbecue, hot dogs and hamburgers that day you shared it. I was like, can you believe that? Did you know that story? Oh my gosh, we got to go find this diner. So anyways, if you could just,
Yeah. So as far back as I know, my grandfather and my grandmother on my dad's side both dealt with sex addiction. At least sexual immorality or sexual brokenness, whatever you want to call it. They were both, to my knowledge, they were both married to different people. They had an affair together on their spouses, ran off, and they were checking into a hotel in New Orleans. And on the counter of the hotel was a matchbook for a local restaurant, and it was Edith Jayne's Restaurant. And from what I gather is you couldn't check into a hotel back in the day if you weren't married, just because of morality laws and rules in different states, because, adultery used to be illegal in America. I mean, there was all sorts of morality laws in America that were written into government law. And so they checked in as Mr. and Mrs. Jayne. Some people think they got married, but the story I heard, from my grandma before she passed away, is that they never legally got married, never legally got divorced. They just had some kids, started living together, started a family together, and gave all the kids the last name Jayne. And so our real last name is Toniola, because my great-grandfather Antonio, he came over on the boat from Italy into Ellis Island and started this whole family. And grandma, I remember, found out that she cut her own daughter out of her will because the daughter caught her sleeping with the neighbor, and she told grandpa that...
But your direct grandma.
Yeah, my grandma was sleeping with a neighbor, and my aunt, told grandpa, mom's sleeping with the neighbor, hated her, cut her out of the will over it. I mean, just it was a very broken family. And so my dad's childhood was rough. It was not a pleasant childhood. There was physical abuse, there was emotional abuse, and so it was not an easy childhood. And it's amazing what he became with his life, with all the circumstances. He was career military, 23 years, retired an officer, very successful career in the military, and really made a very successful life despite all the brokenness and pain. Now, emotionally, family-wise, lots of trauma. Just he brought into his family what he received from his family and just didn't break that generational curse. And so it passed down into our childhood, a lot of brokenness and trauma. So we've worked hard as a family to kind of break that generational curse, to allow my boys to experience something different than what I grew up in and something different than what their grandpa grew up in. And so that's our goal is to break that generational curse and give them a fresh start at life.
And through all that brokenness, when you're growing up, that your father, the demons he was battling, whatever, he was still a man of faith.
Yeah.
And so...
he loved God.
And is that, to my recollection of you sharing and Discover at one point, when you were young, did you want to be work in the church?
Oh, man, I wanted to be a pastor from the time I was 6 years old. I preached my first sermon in a little Baptist church at 6 years old. It was terrible. But 6 years old, I preached it was a kid's Sunday, preached for 3 minutes, and it was like that was my dream.
What was the subject? Do you remember?
No, I have no idea what it was. I just remember it was a disaster. I was so nervous.
If only we had a home video, Aaron.
I wanted to be like my dad. I would go with him when he would preach at different churches, and I wanted to be just like him. That was my heart. That was my desire.
So did you kind of come, when you're 12 years old and you guys move back to Texas and your dad leaves? I mean, did that break your hopes and dreams of wanting to be like him? I mean, did you? I'm trying to understand like when the path may have changed for you.
Yeah,
at
no,
some
I
point.
remember willfully at about 12 or 13 years old, I made this willful decision to turn my back on God and basically say, I don't want anything to do with Christianity. I don't want anything to do with God. I don't want anything to do with my father. I'll never become like him. And I went as far away as I could. The thing about my dad with his sex addiction, he never drank alcohol, never smoked, never did any of those vices. So I decided I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to drink, I'm going to smoke, I'm going to do drugs. I'm going to do as much as I can. What I didn't realize is all of those things just opened the door for sex addiction, which I was very prone to because of my family background. And so I, promising myself to never become like my dad, I became 10 times worse than he ever was. So much worse than he ever was because it grew inside of me.
And about how long, you start that at 12 years old or whatever, and about how many years are you living that life?
Yeah, 23 years. I lived that life for 23 years before I finally got free. I got free back in 2010, 2011 is when I started the journey of freedom in my life. So
you go through high school and you graduate high school, you want to join the Army, but then you feel, wait a second, this is not my calling. And are you feeling pulled back to God?
No, what had happened was I actually had theater scholarships in New York for acting, for Broadway when I graduated high school.
Did you want to be an actor?
Yeah, no, I grew up on stage. I was in theater, lettered and thespian in high school. But I was a Stanislavski method actor because I hated my life. I hated my childhood and I hated my past. And so I studied Stanislavski to go deep, deep, deep into characters.
I don't know what that means.
Stanislavski method acting was a really, trying to think, famous method actors. Would be like Nick Cage,
or like
Johnny Depp.
Heath Ledger, right?
Yeah, Heath Ledger was a deep method actor.
Yeah.
And what you do is you literally go into character. You're not acting. Like you become this person. Like I would, a couple hours before a show, I would go deep into character. And it was almost like before the show, you couldn't ask me anything about Aaron Jayne. I couldn't answer the question, but you could ask me about my character's childhood because you build this entire history for every character. What they went through as a child, what their school was like, what their friends was like vacations they went on. You create this entire world that you go into. And it's very dangerous. It's very because you can get lost in it pretty hard. And I lost myself in it, I did it, escape my reality, escape who I was. And then I realized I'm like totally losing myself. The drugs, the method acting, I was losing myself. And so I said, I can't do this. And so, I just on a whim decided to join the Army. My dad was Air Force and I was never going to do Air Force because I wasn't going to be like my dad. So I went the opposite direction, joined the Army. And they put me in this cadet program, sent me to college in Arizona and started this journey. And while I was in college in Arizona for the military, so it was weird. There's ROTC, which is like voluntary. And then there's West Point, which is a full military academy. We were something in between, so we were owned by the Army. They owned us. We were contracted. We had to train summers, weekends, like we had to wear uniforms to school. But we went to college full time so that we could become an officer.
Were you enjoying it?
Yeah, it was actually a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. But again, college life, because I wasn't in full military, I was still in college life. There was lots of time to party and drink and do stupid things and just hit rock bottom. And just emotionally, I was spiraling out of control. And I was on the verge of like flunking out, losing, the whole opportunity. And then I just hit, this point where our dorms in college closed for Christmas and we didn't have any training over the holidays. And so I literally spent Christmas one year sleeping in my car. And because I had nowhere to go. I didn't have a relationship with my dad. My mom really didn't want me around my younger brother and sister at the time.
Because of your lifestyle?
And they were a long way away in Texas. And so I just spent Christmas sleeping in my car and just hit rock bottom. Didn't want to go on anymore. I was done, and so I was thinking about, like, what could I do to end my life? I don't think I had the courage to commit suicide.
Oh my gosh, but you had the thoughts.
But I had lots of thoughts. Like I never, I never acted on it in ways that would actually work. I had thoughts, I'd sit on, high overpass bridges in Phoenix drunk, just, hoping I would fall off on accident, because I couldn't bring myself to throw myself off. Gosh. But things like that. And then there was this kid in my class who would always invite me to his dad's church. And they had this huge Christmas show with flying angels and a 50-foot singing Christmas tree and laser lights. It was just a wild production.
Gosh, that sounds epic.
Biggest production in Phoenix. And I went that year, but when I went to the church the first time, we were high on drugs, to see laser lights. Like, it wasn't for Jesus. We were there, and we didn't even remember them preaching the gospel. And they did, but we were too out of it. Mm-hmm. So something in my heart said, give God another chance. And I was like, well, God hates me.
Because of that service?
Yeah. And I was like, God hates me. God will never accept me. He'll never take me back for the things I've done. But it kept tugging my heart. So I said, fine, I'll go to that big church. I mean, it's like 2 balconies, 6,000 seats. Like, I'll sit in the top balcony in the very back, prove God can't touch me. Like, I'll hide back there, and then I'll leave, and I'll find a way to end it. And the pastor every Sunday is at the back door, sometimes for 2 hours. It's a big church. And he's there, available, loving on people, hanging out with people. And I was walking out the back door, and I don't know if it was God or if he just could tell I had issues. But he pulled me over the side. He goes, I don't know what you've done in your life, but Jesus loves you and he'll forgive you. And I love you and I want you in my church. Now, the pastor that we'd grown up with, the pastor my whole life in Texas from my earlier childhood, and then we moved back to Texas, he told my mom to give up on me. I was hopeless because I was so broken and angry that he didn't ever see me coming to God or changing. And so this guy's like, I love you. I want you in my church. And I was like, this guy's crazy. He has no idea who I am. He doesn't know the problems I have. But I went back the next week. Those words haunted me all week. Went back, and I remember vividly, he's preaching a message about Peter and John mending broken nets and how God will fix a broken net and use it to catch fish again. Well, I was meant to catch fish. I was called to be a fisher of men. I mean, that's what a pastor is, but I was a broken net. And so I remember going down to the altar that day, and I said, God, if you can fix this broken net and use me to catch fish, I'll give you the rest of my life. But I can't do religion. I can't be a part of religion.
Right.
I got to do something real. Because I grew up in religion. Religion really turned their back on my family. The church that we grew up with turned our back on our family after the divorce, because somehow we were now a bad influence on all of our friends because of what my dad did.
So you were shunned.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh. So, I mean, I hated the church.
Yeah.
And so a couple months after that, he said, I'm sending my son to Los Angeles to start a church in the inner city of LA, working with gang members and drug addicts and homeless people. Do you want to go? And I was like, yeah.
A couple months later.
Yeah, a couple months later. And so literally I broke my contract with the Army, left Phoenix, left college, and me and Matthew Barnett moved to Los Angeles, 19 and 20 years old, and started what became the Dream Center.
Was he the one that had invited you to that church?
Yeah, he invited me to his dad's church when I got saved. He moved to LA a few months before me, and then I followed him shortly after, and we started this crazy journey about the old Queen of Angels Hospital through a series of miracles right in downtown Los Angeles. Today, over 900 people live in that facility that have been rescued from drugs, gangs, prostitution, homelessness, everything you can imagine. And we started this journey. No idea what we were doing. We just had fun, loving people, helping people, figuring it out.
Is this in the 90s? I'm trying to do the timeline.
95.
So you're in the 90s.
95.
You're in like downtown LA.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I got beat up twice by 2 different gangs, jumped, shot at. I remember they slashed my tires, busted out all of our windows in the car.
And you didn't
multiple
leave.
times.
You stayed. You didn't take any of that.
We were too dumb. We didn't know better. We moved to L. When I got saved, we reread all the crazy missionary books of people who Jim Elliot, who gave his life to the tribe in the jungle. And those were our heroes. And we were ready to die for Jesus. We didn't care. We were just we were on fire, whatever it takes, to get people to heaven. even if it costs us our life, we're going to do it. Because those are all the books I read.
Were you sober at this point?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Totally.
so you were
I got radically saved.
Okay.
I mean, radically. I was on fire for God. And so we knew moving to Los Angeles was not going to be safe or easy. But we didn't do it because it was safe or easy. We did it because we thought we were going to end up in one of these books one day in heaven with this massive crown for being a martyr. I mean, we were crazy. We just wanted to make a difference for God. And, you know, it wasn't about like our life and protecting our life. It was about laying our life down for Jesus because he laid his life down for us. And that's what we did.
Did you ever eventually become known around those streets with the people? You know what I mean? So did you get to a point where, not that it was less dangerous,
credibility,
but your street cred?
Yeah, I mean, the first year was rough because they didn't know who we were. And so there's lots of threats, lots of craziness. After we consistently, you know, we had food programs and clothing programs and adopt a block, knock on doors, serving families, helping families. When we helped enough kids and teenagers and children, we had like a level of protection. And so I remember one day we were out on this block and this crazy gang member was drunk and me and Matthew were walking down the street and he looked at us, he said, "Get out of here, I'll effing kill you, blah, 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 blah." And he was dead serious. I mean, he was like threatening to kill us and he had a gun, everything. And we just looked at him and we were like, "Look, you got to do what you got to do. But God gave us these streets and we're not going anywhere." And we kept going. The next week we came back in the same house where that kid was, the guy was sitting on the stairs. It was like a group of gang members. And they came down, saw us, surrounded us like in a circle. And
did you at any point want to turn back or you just kept going?
I mean, there's nowhere to go at this point. They're surrounding you.
Oh my gosh.
And so they said to us, "Do you remember that guy that talked to you last week?" And we're like, "Yeah." "Do you remember what he said to you?" We're like, "Here we go. We're about to meet Jesus." And here's exactly what they said. They said, "We took care of him. You'll never see him again. You're welcome here. You've fed our little brothers. You've taken care of our kids and our moms. You're welcome here." Literally, like everything changed overnight. And there's still other neighborhoods like didn't know us well, but in our neighborhood, everything shifted. I don't know what they did to the guy we didn't ask.
Yeah,
but
you don't want to know.
We had
Just
no more problems in that neighborhood. Like we were protected. They put a protection order over the church and all of our teams. And so we were out on a regular basis serving that community and never had any issues. We never had anybody hurt or killed or anything. I mean, people in the community were killed regularly, but nobody working or volunteering at the church was ever in any violent incident in that community.
Straight America right there.
Oh yeah. I mean, but you got to earn it. I mean, you got to earn your stripes. You know, you got to go out there and you got to prove, because there were walls graffitied in the inner city that says Jesus doesn't live here anymore. Because Christian ministries go down there, it gets too hard, they leave, and the people there feel like Jesus abandoned us. They came, all these promises, and he's gone. And we realized that we couldn't abandon them. We had to stick it out. Like the only way we were going to make any impact there is we had to stick it out. No matter what happened, we had to stick it out. And that was the only thing we did right. And I think it was because we were too dumb, young, stupid, never went to college. We didn't go to Bible college to figure out what you're not supposed to do. And that was the reason it worked, is because we just, too stupid to know better.
Totally. I mean, can you imagine how old is Asher? How old is Asher right now?
He's 17 in 2 weeks.
Can you imagine him going down and doing that essentially?
Yeah, I did it at 19. He's 2 years away from how old I was.
Imagine?
That'd be crazy.
Wild, right? But again, thank God you did it at that time when all you had to care about was yourself. So you didn't have to worry about family or kids, right? That's just the time to do it. And look at how it's grown. It was earlier this year in January. What kicked off this new year? The fires in LA, burning everything down. And I wasn't even searching for any specific news outlet, but the Dream Center
everywhere
showed up everywhere and was national news as a safe space. Yeah. And it didn't matter how long the line was of cars. And was it Matthew is he still there running it? He's like, "I'm not sleeping, but we don't need sleep, whatever."
Yeah, Matthew
right?
actually be at Coastline later this year. And so we'll schedule an episode of Coastline connections with him. But yeah, he'll be down later this year speaking on a Sunday.
Just from those, the seed planted all those years ago into how it's still so relevant in helping people in different ways that never thought they would need the help today. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, there's over 300 dream centers now around the world.
And it started from the one in LA.
All started from the one in LA. That name was never used until we didn't even come up with the name. We were giving a tour one day. It was called Los Angeles International Church. And we were giving a tour to a group of people, letting them see all the work that God was doing. And we were like, we just wanted to build a place where people with broken dreams can come and dream again. And somebody on the tour said, oh, it's a dream center. And the name stuck. It was like, so we don't even know the person that gave us the name. It was just some random person on a tour. And now that's the name of dream centers all over the world.
You know it when I hit it. It's like, oh, that's exactly it. And isn't this your work at the Dream Center? Is that eventually what led you to meet your wife, to meet Amanda?
Yeah. I mean, we had every Thursday night at the Dream Center, we had to raise a lot of money to survive. And so we had pastors from all over America come on Thursday nights to speak. And hopefully they would consider to put us in their mission support, monthly mission support, or give a mission offering to the Dream Center to help us survive the work. And her father pastored a great church in Houston, Texas. And we had him on a Thursday night. And she was not there that night, but he went home and said, hey, I met the guy, because I had to take care of all of our guest pastors and drive them around and entertain them. He said, I met the guy you're going to marry. And that was 3 years before we physically met.
Well, so what were your first thoughts of him? Did you like him?
Yeah,
Did you think like, oh,
I mean,
did he tell you that
honestly,
he had a daughter? Did he even tell you he had a daughter he was like thinking about connecting you with?
Every pastor that had a daughter had the same conversation with me. And so I had heard that a bunch of times. I mean, I did like him. He was a very nice guy, a great preacher. And I was always like my job was to smooze and make them feel like $1 million. And that was always my job. Every week because again, we were fundraising. And so it's like, I got to make this pastor feel good. I got to make him feel like he's the best preacher that ever preached at the Dream Center, because, we were raising money and like literally what God was doing was so incredible and so impactful. And I did it like, it was never like, we never did it with impure motives. Like it was pure. Like what God was doing was amazing. And we love these pastors for taking the time to come be with us. So it wasn't fake or insincere. It was completely sincere. Mm-hmm. I genuinely love these pastors because they took the time to come see what God was doing, and so many of them would support us. So it sounds like, man, you guys really knew what you were doing. No, it was sincere. It was 100% sincere and genuine, but my job was to make them feel loved and help them understand how much we appreciated them, how grateful we were, because we knew if they had a really good experience and they really loved what God was doing, then they very likely would generously give a love offering to help us continue to help people.
So then at what point did it go from a love offering to a love connection? Like, how did you eventually connect with his daughter?
He wanted to send a mission team to the Dream Center from their church in Houston, and so he asked her to email me because I was the only person they knew at the Dream Center. So she emailed me. We started emailing back and forth, and we got on the phone, talked a couple times, and because he tried to set us up 3 years before, and we actually talked on the phone a couple times 3 years before. But
did you feel anything over the phone?
Well, she did. She felt I was very arrogant and selfish and like not really paying attention. Like I would ask her the same questions every time we talked, and I was very into myself. And so, and she was probably right. At that time in my life, I was, probably like a little egotistical. And so finally, when we reconnected 3 years later, it was different. We talked, we had some really good conversations, but we didn't meet each other. And so it was the playoffs. Dodgers were supposed to go to the second round into Houston to play the Houston Astros.
Okay.
So I said, can you get tickets to the playoff in Houston? And she had a connection and was able to get tickets. Dodgers ended up losing. St. Louis won. So it was St. Louis versus Houston, but it was still a great baseball game. It was still the playoffs. And so I flew out there. Roger Clemens was pitching on our very first date. So our first date was the Houston Astros. And honestly, I don't even remember who won the game. We had so much fun.
You were such a boy. That's all great. I mean, it's great with the baseball statistics, but I want to know, like, when you first saw her, you know what I mean?
She was gorgeous.
Like,
she was drop dead gorgeous.
She's so beautiful. And you're like, wait a minute,
Way
this
out
is
of my
who
league.
you want to meet,
No,
you know?
she was way out of my league. She was beautiful, and I was like, man, I gotta get married to this girl as fast as I can because I'm never gonna get a girl this hot again.
You
That's what I was
landed
thinking
a good
selfishly,
one.
yeah.
There you go. Oh, that's a fun first date
She
story.
actually just
though.
walked
That's
into the
really
studio.
cool.
So I'm gonna find out how much trouble I am in our next episode.
That's right. We're doing another grace-based living after this podcast. And I know you're so interesting. I don't even know how long we've been talking, but we still have more to go.
I think we're gonna have to go to part 2.
We're gonna have to do a part 2.
We got a whole nother half
We have
of the life story
another
to tell.
half to this story, and it is actually the perfect time because you had a life before Amanda and a life before Coastline, and then you have a life out, after and with Amanda, and where Coastline comes in. And I would love to I have a lot of questions about that. So yeah, let's do that if you don't mind.
Let's dive in.
We'll wrap this. This is part 1. Wait, let's dive in now or later?
No, let's dive in on part 2.
Okay, good. Yes.
We went deep
Okay, we'll do
enough
that. We
with the first
did.
half of my life.
So
Yeah.
good. We're going to leave you guys wanting more because I want more. This has been so fun.
Oh, the good stuff is coming in part 2.
It's so
You don't want to
good.
miss part 2. That's the gossip. That's the scandal. That's the painful part.
You would have done so good in radio because this is like a radio tease, right? Like that's my world. I've been in radio for 20 years, so that's what I'm giving you props for. I love it. So, okay, thank you, Pastor Aaron, for this part 1 of Coastline Connections with you. So clearly, you'll have to wait for the good stuff for part 2. But next week, you'll be able to get another episode of Pastor Aaron with Amanda, grace-based living. And thank you again.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for joining us on the Coastline podcast today. And let me tell you, if you ever have a question for myself or my wife or any of our guests, or would love to hear a show about or a question about, email us at podcast@coastlinechurch.org, and we'd love to respond to you. Now, before you sign out, please like, subscribe, or follow whatever device you are on or platform you are following us with today so that you never miss an episode. I'm grateful to get to do this together. Thank you for joining us.